We buy perfumes from Middle Eastern houses and assume we have Middle Eastern fragrance. And I'm saying we because I know I thought and operated that way for years. I had bottles from Lattafa, from Afnan, from Khadlaj, from Amazing Alhambra, from I had a whole shelf from Middle Eastern perfume houses. And I thought, okay, I have Middle Eastern fragrance covered. It's in my fragrance wardrobe until I discovered it wasn't. I figured out the hard way. I was researching my collection. Um, just had gotten to the point where I decided I wanted to be deliberate about the fragrances I buy, the fragrances I keep, the fragrances I use, not just buying for buying sake or because somebody somewhere said, "Oh, it looks good." I discovered at some point I was buying might be different houses, but buying the same fragrance over and over again. So I wanted to sit down, mapped out the fragrance profiles I wanted covered in my fragrance wardrobe. They're researching my collection, trying to understand what I owned, what I was missing, and I came across an article that stopped me. I knew for certain that I wanted Middle Eastern perfumery represented in my fragrance wardrobe, but the article was like, oh, oud is a primary ingredient in Arabian perfumery. The article, and I'm trying to remember where, I cannot remember where I found it, but I do remember it saying that oud sits at the center of the tradition that is Arabian perfumery. And oud was the one ingredient I had been actively running from. So here I am. I want Middle Eastern perfumery represented in my fragrance wardrobe. I think it already is. And then I find out that the thing that defines the tradition, or one of the things that defines the tradition, is the one thing I've been avoiding. Turns out, Middle Eastern perfumery is more than the name of the house on the bottle. It has its own identity, its own history, its own scent profile that exists nowhere else. And at that particular point in time, I had none of it. So I went looking, and what I found is what this entire series is built on. This is Arabian Scent Files, the only fragrance series that treats Middle Eastern perfumery as a subject worth studying, not just a place to find cheap alternatives. Every episode goes deeper than the bottle. I'm Chizoba. Let's get into it. Before I get into what I found, I need to tell you something about where this all started. Fragrance, my fragrance journey. Because it didn't start with Middle Eastern perfumery, it started a lot earlier than that. I grew up watching my dad leave the house, and I could tell he was about to go before I even heard the door open. I would be upstairs reading a book, fast asleep, deep into whatever I was doing, and then I'd smell it. I smelled fragrance in the air, and that's how I knew he was about to go out. He wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't see him because I'm upstairs, he's downstairs. I would just smell his fragrance in the air. And I could tell from what I was smelling, A, that he was going out. And B, I could tell based on the perfume or cologne he'd sprayed where he was going. But the most important thing is his presence announced itself even before he left the door. And as I started getting older, I realized it wasn't just that he wore fragrance. Well, first of all, he wore it every single time. His philosophy was you never leave the house without spraying some smell good. But there was also something cool about how he wore it. Like when he was going out for errands, like he was taking us shopping or what have you, he would wear something softer, definitely still masculine. But if we wanted to go for a formal event like church or when he was going to work, he would wear something that was more intense, that would fill the whole room. Now I'm able to figure out what the notes were, but that's just how it interpreted to me. Like it was more intense, it projected more, it felt denser and heavier when it was for more formal events. And so as I got older, I realized he was deliberately choosing his scent the same way he chose his clothes, with intention and with purpose. What he wore to go shopping or to run errands or to be out and about outside the house wasn't what he wore to work, wasn't what he wore like to a formal gathering, if you will. The other thing I remember growing up is every shopping trip we went to, every single one. whether we're going to the grocery store or the period of time where all we could afford to go to was the Dollar Tree, we would always stop at a discount fragrance shelf. I remember in Marshalls, it used to be like baskets right before the checkout counters. But we would always stop there. We'll pick things up, we'll smell them, we'll explore. Sometimes it'll be like $3 a bottle or marked down to $15. Sometimes they were really cheap. We'll talk about what we're smelling. Even on the days we couldn't afford to buy anything, it was always the hallmark or the ending of our trips. Like sometimes we'll go shopping with our mom and she's off trying clothes, and we'll leave her where she's at and head to go find the perfume aisle to see and explore, see what we could find. He had a system, a fragrance system I figured out just by watching him. Whenever we went and even when we bought something, wherever we bought them from, Marshalls, Dollar Tree, wherever, when he got home, he would try them again. And the ones he tried that he didn't like, he would put it in the bathroom cabinet, like, you guys do what you want with it. The ones he actually wanted and would use, and he was really, really picky, he would leave them in his dresser drawer, which was sacred. Nobody ever touched it, went there, not even my mom. Well, except my mom. But those he would put in his dresser drawer, that was just that. Every other one was in the bathroom cabinet. You want to take it, just it was accessible to everybody else. Like I mentioned, he never left the house without spraying something. It didn't matter what we had or they didn't have. You found something, you sprayed something, and you walked out of doors smelling like you were meant to be wherever you were going. And that's something that has largely influenced my fragrance philosophy. It's something I've never forgotten. Fragrance is not the finishing touch. It is part of the outfit. It is part of the armor you wear going out. But it is also, for me now, it is also not just for going out, but for staying at home. Part of fragrance is how you tell the world and yourself that you are prepared, that you are present, that you showed up on purpose. Fragrance is also now how I show up for myself every day. I don't have to be good anywhere to spray fragrance, and what I spray largely is determined by what's the mood I want to create or the mood I want to reflect. What's the event? What am I wearing? Sometimes like, well, what's my makeup giving today, and I want to pair my fragrance with that. But I built all of that, or all of that came to be, developed all of that from watching my dad. He taught me all about fragrance without ever having to sit me down to explain. Like we've never had a conversation. We've had conversations about specific bottles, but about fragrance and the philosophy of it, we've never talked about it. And what I didn't know until I started researching this series, Arabian Scent Files, is that what he taught me, essentially, that fragrance is identity. Fragrance is intention or intentional. Fragrance is something you don't leave the house with. That philosophy actually sits at the center of Gulf fragrance culture or Arabian fragrance culture. It has been that way in that region for thousands of years. Fragrance as identity, as something intentional. My dad was practicing something without knowing its name. He was practicing a philosophy that has been central to the Middle East for longer than most traditions I can think of. And I love that connection. I just in this series, I love my personal connection to it without even knowing the name for it or that it was actually a theme. He'd lived that philosophy, he'd passed it on to me and to my brother, and now we carry it in different ways. Of course, we add our own touch to it, but now we carry it. So I started diving deeper into Middle Eastern perfumery while trying to build out my fragrance wardrobe. I was interested by what I found. I'm like, yeah, I want to do more. I want to read, research, watch what the fragrance community has been saying about these perfume houses. And one thing I kept running into in most conversations is the conversation about Middle Eastern perfumery seems to start at, oh, what designer does this smell like? What is this a dupe for? Every perfume house or most Middle Eastern perfume houses, for example, Lattafa, is almost like unofficially it's called a dupe house. Every bottle and every house and every conversation is filtered or mostly filtered through one lens. Which Baccarat Rouge does this copy? Which designer perfume does this dupe? What are you getting cheap that you'd otherwise pay full price for? If I'm honest, I get where that comes from. Now that I've owned more bottles and I've been deliberate about trying things out, I see where it comes from. When Western audiences discovered these Middle Eastern perfume houses, we mapped what we already knew to them. We are not seeing them as something brand new. I say, this is what I know. So I'm looking at something through the lens of what I already know. And that's just how we process new things. The unfortunate thing is that that framing misses something enormous. And the more I learned about where these Middle Eastern perfume houses come from and what they're actually doing, the more the dupe conversation bothered me. So I want to explain how I actually think about this. I want to use a food analogy. Imagine a recipe calls for turkey, classic turkey dish, but somebody makes it with chicken instead. Now they might have extra spices for whatever to account for the fact that they are using chicken. I have an extra few vegetables, but the foundation of that dish or the inspiration for that dish is a classic turkey dish. If you have the chicken dish, it might remind you of the turkey dish, but it's not exactly the same. It might like, oh, that turkey thing with chicken and a few extra something. It's inspired, that chicken dish is inspired by the turkey dish, but it's not an exact copy of it. It has its own texture, its own flavor, its own character, but it's its own thing. To me, that's a designer alternative. There are Middle Eastern perfumery. Most of the ones we say are dupes of something, are not exact copies of whatever we say they are dupes of. That's what a dupe means. A duplication of something, an exact copy of something else. I prefer the word designer alternative because it means it was inspired by. It might serve a similar occasion, but it's distinct enough to have its own identity. It's not a copy of. And in Middle Eastern perfumery, there are those three things. Let's go back to our dish. There are the dishes, there are houses or certain fragrances that are exactly that turkey dish recipe, exactly the way the recipe calls for it. There is a dish that's substituted, that's inspired by the turkey dish, that has chicken and other ingredients and other spices, but was inspired by it. Then there's the dish that was never a turkey dish at all, wasn't trying to be something completely different, probably been on the table longer than before the turkey dish recipe existed. Just kind of happen to use the same ingredient because those ingredients or spices are just that good. That's Middle Eastern perfume. Have all those three dishes, but unfortunately, they've all been distilled down to the word dupe. Middle Eastern perfumery does not owe anything. Western perfume predates it. It was here first. So again, just a breakdown of those three categories. There are fragrances that are intentional inspirations. It's legitimate. We acknowledge it. It's a real business model worth talking about, honestly. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. There are fragrances that share notes, not because they copied anything. Middle Eastern fragrances that share notes with Western perfumery. That just happen to draw from the same ingredients like rose, saffron, amber. They show up for different reasons, but they are there. They are common ingredients that are used. And then there are original Middle Eastern compositions. Calling everything a dupe is just wrong. It's wrong. It's completely backwards. So I am not going to be using the word dupe because I have also discovered as I've tested things, every time I hear something is a dupe of something else and I buy the original and I buy what is supposed to be the dupe, 8 to 9 times out of 10, I struggle to find the dupeness. It's like, oh, I see why they say this is similar, but yeah, this is not exactly it. So I prefer to use the word designer or the phrase designer alternative. A designer alternative sits in the same fragrance family and serves the same occasion, but it has its own identity, has its own story, has its own craftsmanship. It's not trying to be something else. It just speaks a similar language. So that is the language I'm going to use in this series. Every time you hear me say designer alternative, it just means inspired by. And I will be honest, if it's a dupe, I have come across one perfume where you can close your eyes, I can't tell between the original and what came after. There are dupes out there that just not as widespread and as present as the fragrance community conversation will have you believe. So I'll be using this as an alternative to mean inspired by. And if you hear me use the word dupe, it's exactly that. I think something is an exact copy of it. And I'm asking you to use it that way too. Because language shapes how we think. And if we keep calling everything a dupe, we'll keep missing the actual story and the actual magic of what this fragrance is. So what is Arabian Scent Files? What is this series? Arabian Scent Files is not a review channel. It's not a dupe guide. It's not a list of affordable alternatives to things you can't afford. Arabian Scent Files is the only fragrance series that treats Middle Eastern perfumery as a subject worth studying. The history behind it, the culture behind it, the craft behind it, and the bottles that prove that Middle Eastern perfumery is still alive right now. Every episode will go deeper than the bottle. In every episode, my goal and my hope is that you leave knowing something real that changes how you look at every Middle Eastern fragrance you own. My name is Zoba. I am the creator behind Zoba's scent steals and Zoba's fragrances. I came to Middle Eastern perfume tradition through a gap I found in my own collection. A gap that turned into a research spiral, that turned into everything you're watching now and that you will watch in this series or listen to in this series. And I promise you this, I will not talk down to you. I will not reduce thousands of years of history to a list of affordable bottles. And I will never call something a dupe when it deserves to be understood as something more. To understand what Middle Eastern perfumery actually is, where it came from, what it built, what makes it distinct from every other fragrance tradition in the world, you have to go back further than most people think. Not to Dubai, not to when Lattafa was founded, not even to the invention of modern spray perfume. A lot farther back. Far back enough to the world's first recorded perfumer, who was a woman who worked in 1200 BCE, what is now modern day Iraq. And most people in the fragrance community do not even know her name. That's where we will start, part 2. I'll see you there.